Welcome to Underworld UK, where Britain's darkest stories are brought to light. From the gritty streets of gangland London, Liverpool, Manchester and Birmingham, from Curtis Warren to the Cray twins to county lines and modern day true crime, we cover everything. Bringing you new videos every week. Subscribe so that you'll be notified when the next video is put out.
On June 30th, my sister decided to make the only correct choices in episode 1 of season 1 of the Walking Dead games, and for that her face will be mutilated further than necessary. I also recall a video by Living Echoes on YouTube, Best of Lee and Clementine Definitive Edition. It was a compilation, and he decided to kill Larry in front of Clementine, and then I later learned he decided to kill the St. John's in front of Clementine. I am the chosen one, chosen by Clementine. I am guided, as Christians are guided by Jesus Christ, and there will be no more killings of Larrys in front of Clementine, no more killings of St. John's in front of Clementine. And overall, Clementine's content will be preserved, maximised. That's the message I want to give out.
It's the early hours of a September morning in Luton, a quiet tower block on Tower Road. Inside a small flat, the sound of a single gunshot, then another. Within minutes, 3 innocent lives are gone. Juliana Falcon, a loving mother of 2, 16-year-old Kyle Prosper and 13-year-old Giselle, all killed by someone they trusted more than anyone else in the world, their own son, their own brother. His name was Nicholas Prosper, 19 years old, a boy from Luton who became one of Britain's most shocking family killers. But what drove him, a quiet teenager with no criminal record, to commit something so brutal, so calculated, and so cold? This is the story of the Prosper family murder. And browsing the internet, his middle child, Kyle, was just 16, athletic, friendly, protective of his little sister, and Giselle, only 13, bright, cheerful, and popular at school. Together, they were a close-knit family. At least, that's how it appeared from the outside.
But behind closed doors, something was changing in Nicholas. As he left school and drifted into isolation, he began spending hours, sometimes entire nights, on the internet. He wasn't looking at football scores or music videos. He was studying mass shootings. Columbine, Sandy Hook, Dunblane. He wanted to understand how they happened, and eventually, he wanted to become one of them. By summer 2024, Nicholas Prosper wasn't just watching, he was planning. The plan was simple, but horrifying. Prosper would kill his family first, then carry out a mass shooting at his old primary school, St. Joseph's Catholic Primary, just a few miles away. He believed killing his mother and siblings would free him from distraction, a chilling echo of other killers who saw family as obstacles to their mission. Over the course of months, he searched online for ways to obtain a gun in the UK. He read guides on forging shotgun certificates, watched YouTube tutorials on how to create fake IDs, and began contacting legitimate gun dealers. In September 2024, he succeeded. Using a fake certificate in an older man's name, Prosper legally purchased a double-barreled shotgun and ammunition. Police later said he was days, if not hours, away from carrying out his next attack, a mass shooting at his old primary school, St. Joseph's Catholic Primary, just a few miles away. He believed killing his mother and siblings would free him from distraction, a chilling echo of other killers who saw family as obstacles to their mission. Over the course of months, he searched online for ways to obtain a gun in the UK. He read guides on forging shotgun certificates, watched YouTube tutorials on how to create fake IDs, and began contacting legitimate gun dealers. In September 2024, he succeeded. Using a fake certificate in an older man's name, Prosper legally purchased a double-barreled shotgun and ammunition. Police later said he was days, if not hours, away from carrying out his next attack, a mass shooting at the school where he once played as a child. He had already written out his plans, mapped the route, and packed spare cartridges. But first, he went home, to Lee Bank Flats. It was the early hours of 13 September 2024. While the town slept, Nicholas Prosper prepared to kill his own family. What followed would horrify even the most experienced police officers in Bedfordshire. It's 4 a.m, Friday, 13 September 2024. The tower block is silent. Just the hum of a refrigerator and the faint flicker of a streetlight outside. Inside flat 25, Nicholas Prosper moves quietly from room to room. In one hand, a kitchen knife. In the other, the shotgun he had bought only 2 days earlier. His family are asleep. His mother Juliana in her room, Kyle and Giselle in theirs. What happens next can only be described as pure horror. Juliana is the first to be attacked. She suffers slash wounds to the neck and head, and multiple gunshot injuries.
16-year-old Kyle hears the noise and runs to help, only to be met with the same unimaginable violence. He fights back. Defensive wounds later found on his hands and arms, but the attack is relentless. 13-year-old Giselle is the last, a child who should have been safe in her bed, killed in an act of total cruelty. When detectives later entered that flat, they said it was one of the most disturbing scenes they had ever witnessed. Blood on the walls, a shattered family, and a silence that hung heavy over the building. After killing his mother, brother and sister, Prosper calmly reloaded the shotgun, took extra cartridges and left the flat. He didn't run, he didn't panic. He walked down the concrete stairs out into the night, carrying the weapon that he planned to use again. His next stop was meant to be St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School, a place filled with children and teachers starting their day, but fate and the quick reaction of neighbours stopped him. At 6:30 a.m, neighbours in the block reported loud bangs and screams. Police officers arrived minutes later. When they forced open the door to the Prosper flat, they were met with devastation. 3 victims, all deceased, and no sign of the killer. A manhunt began across Luton. Armed response units, dogs and helicopters scoured the area. Just hours later, near Birmingham Road, less than 2 miles from the scene, police spotted Prosper walking with the shotgun slung in a bag. He was arrested without resistance. In his pockets, they found ammunition and written plans for the school attack. What the officers didn't realise at first was just how close they had come to preventing another massacre. The following hours would unravel one of the most chilling cases in modern British crime. Detectives from the Bedfordshire, Cambridgeshire and Hertfordshire Major Crime Unit took charge of the investigation. Prosper's calmness in custody unsettled them. He didn't deny the murders, in fact he admitted them almost immediately. During questioning, he told detectives his plan was to make history, to become infamous. His next step, he said, would have been to drive to St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School and kill as many as possible. The chilling detail was that he'd already mapped it out. He'd even packed his school uniform, intending to blend in when he arrived.
Police recovered evidence from his bedroom. A fake shotgun licence printed on photo paper, a forged driving licence in a false name, handwritten notes describing a final act of glory. On his computer, detectives found searches for Columbine, Sandy Hook, and how to plan a school shooting. They also discovered chat room conversations where he fantasized about breaking records. It became clear that Prosper's murders were not random. They were the first phase of a premeditated massacre. He had intended to kill his family to ensure no one could stop him. When the full extent of the plan was presented in court, even seasoned prosecutors were shaken. At Luton Crown Court, Prosper pleaded guilty to all 3 murders, along with firearms and offensive weapon offences. The prosecution described his crimes as monstrous, calculated, and fueled by a craving for notoriety. Judge Edward Pepperell Casey agreed, sentencing Prosper to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 49 years, one of the longest ever given to someone his age. During sentencing, the judge said, "Your actions destroyed your family and devastated a community. You sought infamy, but what you achieved was nothing but shame." Prosper, emotionless, simply nodded. The investigation revealed how close Britain had come to witnessing its first modern mass school shooting. If not for the neighbours' call and the swift response of Bedfordshire Police, countless more lives might have been lost that morning. But even though his plan was stopped, the scars he left behind on Luton, on his community, and on the nation will never truly heal. After Prosper's arrest, the question everyone asked was simple: why? Why would a 19-year-old with no history of violence turn on the people who loved him most? The answer, as always in cases like this, is complicated. Psychological assessments later revealed that Prosper was on the autism spectrum, but experts were clear this did not explain his violence, nor did it excuse it. What they found instead was something far darker: an obsession with infamy. In notebooks and online searches, Prosper idolized mass shooters from around the world, treating them like celebrities. He had studied how the media covered them, how their names became headlines. He wanted that same spotlight, not for fame, but for notoriety. The psychologist who interviewed him said Prosper saw the world through a cold and detached lens. He lacked empathy, but possessed a frightening level of logic. Every step, from forging documents to choosing his victims, had been planned. He believed that by killing his family first, he'd remove anyone who could interfere with his mission. It wasn't rage, it wasn't impulse, it was calculation. Prosecutors argued that Prosper's crimes were part of a growing and deeply disturbing trend: the digital radicalization of isolated young men who live more online than in the real world, feeding off communities that glorify violence and promise fame through destruction.
In the quiet of his bedroom, Prosper found those worlds, and they shaped him. Investigators traced his browsing history. Hours of research on Columbine, Sandy Hook, Uvalde. He had even watched documentaries about school shootings, analysing what went wrong for the killers, how they could have killed more. That was Nicholas Prosper's mindset. A young man who saw death as a means of becoming remembered. And for that reason, his crimes were labelled among the most disturbing in modern Britain. The sentence came in March 2025. Life imprisonment. Minimum term 49 years. Prosper will not be eligible for release until he is in his late 60s. Even then, the judge made it clear, you may never leave prison. You took 3 innocent lives and planned to take many more. For many, that sentence felt fitting. For others, nothing could ever feel enough. Outside Luton Crown Court, family friends gathered with photos of Juliana, Kyle and Giselle. A small vigil formed at the base of Leebank Flats. Flowers, balloons, handwritten notes. Messages read, "Rest in peace, angels. Gone too soon. Forever in our hearts." The community was shattered. Teachers from St. Joseph's Primary spoke of the horror of what almost happened. Parents hugged their children a little tighter that night. The Prosper case reignited debate across Britain. about mental health support for young people, about online content that glorifies killers, and about how someone so young could access a firearm with forged documents. It also forced a deeper question. How do we stop isolated individuals from turning their fantasies into tragedies? The truth is there are no simple answers. But every time a tragedy like this happens, it exposes cracks in the system. Cracks that must be fixed before the next Nicholas Prosper finds his way through. Juliana Falcon, Kyle Prosper, Giselle Prosper. 3 names that deserve to be remembered, not for how their lives ended, but for how they lived. A devoted mother, a protective brother, and a young girl with her whole future ahead of her. Their story is a reminder that evil can grow quietly, even behind the walls of an ordinary home. But it's also a call for vigilance, for awareness, and for compassion, before silence turns into catastrophe. However, many people are outraged by the sentence handed out to Prosper. The life sentence given to a teenager who murdered his mother and siblings has been referred to the unduly lenient sentence scheme by the Shadow Justice Minister. Nicholas Prosper admitted to using a shotgun to kill Juliana Falcon, 48, Kyle Prosper, 16, and Giselle Prosper, 13, at their home in Luton in September. The 19-year-old had planned to kill about 30 students and staff at his former primary school, but the noise his family made during the struggle alerted neighbours who called the police and interrupted his plans. A spokesperson from the Attorney General's office has confirmed it has received a request to consider Prosper's sentence under the unduly lenient sentence scheme. While it could not confirm who had sent the request, Conservative MP Kieran Mullen had questioned why a whole life order, WHO, was not imposed in a post on X. Unlike a life sentence, which has a minimum time to serve in a prison, a whole life order means the person will never be released. Home secretaries have been able to impose whole life orders since 1983, and judges have held such powers since the passing of the Criminal Justice Act in 2003. It is the harshest penalty available to courts since capital punishment was abolished. The sentence can be considered in exceptional cases, such as those where 2 or more people have been killed with a significant degree of premeditation, or where 1 child is killed with similar pre-planning. Triple murderer and rapist Kyle Clifford was given 3 whole life orders earlier this month after he killed his ex-girlfriend, her sister, and her mother in a crossbow and knife attack in Bushey, Hertfordshire. Nurse Lucy Letby received a total of 15 whole life orders after murdering and attempting to murder babies at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Previously, an individual under the age of 21 could not be given a whole life order. In 2022, this was changed to include offenders aged between 18 and 21, but only in cases where the seriousness was exceptionally high, even when compared to similar offences committed by those 21 and over. This was introduced after the judge could not give Hashem Abidi, the brother of the Manchester Arena bomber, a whole life order because of his age. Prosper would have become the youngest offender to have received one. High Court Judge Mrs. Justice Chima Grubb revealed Prosper had initially refused to attend court. She told him, "You had to be brought. You do not want to be here, but it is not your choice. You have to face the consequences of your actions. To hear the court sentence passed in public, and it is important for those who loved your victims to see you sentenced." In passing the life sentence with a minimum term of 49 years, she told Prosper, "Despite the gravity of your crimes, it is the explicit joint submission of counsel that a lengthy finite term will be a sufficiently severe penalty." The judge said she decided to impose the minimum term life sentence for 3 reasons.
She said, firstly, because you were thwarted from completing your intentions, otherwise this case would have had a very different and even more appalling outcome. Secondly, this prosecution has resulted in guilty pleas. Thirdly, you were 18 at the relevant time. David Bentley Casey, mitigating for Prosper, described him as a young man at the start of his adult life. He pointed to Prosper's guilty pleas, lack of previous convictions, and that he had been living with an undiagnosed autism spectrum disorder, ASD. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you would like to see more videos like this and you are a fan of true crime, then subscribe to the channel and you will be notified of when we put a new video out. Plus, it helps grow our channel, so your support would be much appreciated.